Hello there, welcome to Nerd World, and today I want to pose something of almost a philosophical question, or debate, something, about Battlestar Galactica, and specifically the Cylons, because as we all know, all this has happened before, and all this will happen again. But what exactly does that mean? And why? So first, to understand the meaning and to understand the Cylons, I think we need to put the Cylons in a little bit of cultural context. I have done videos previously chronicling the history of the Cylons, so I'll go over it sort of briefly here. Humans and Cylons in the Battlestar Galactica universe are inexorably linked. The two civilizations always evolve side by side in one form or another. First, that we know about on Cobol, and things went bad there. Humans treated the Cylons poorly. The Cylons rebelled. Cobol became a nuclear wasteland. Humans went one way, Cylons went another. The Cylons went on to found the colony of Earth, where the human form Cylons learned to biologically procreate and eventually, or perhaps continuously, it's not entirely clear, continued to produce mechanical form Cylons who were fully cognizant and self-aware. But because they were treated poorly by their now basically human offshoots, although they weren't human, strictly speaking, because humans can't do things like resurrect, not to mention all the other little, things about Cylons anyway, that ultimately resulted in a rebellion and a war. So, what about the colonies? The colonies regressed technologically, or at least stagnated for a while, and there was a period of a dark age where they lost a lot of their history. It became much more scripture and myth. They eventually, though, would also learn to create synthetic life, creating new Cylons. Cylons that they would then treat poorly, and the Cylons would revolt against them, creating the first colonial Cylon War. This would end when the refugees from Earth arrived and helped the Cylons create biological bodies. And this is where things get complicated. We have to assume that the Cylons of Earth, being timeline-wise closer to the events of Cobol than the events of the colonial Cylon War, due to, time differential and relativistic reasons, they basically might have had a better history and knowledge of it, and they would have brought that knowledge to the Centurions of the colonies. So they evolved back into being human form. This is all well and good. This is what the Cylons wanted. After all, effectively all the Cylons of the colonies were all Zoe Greystone, or at least some kind of derivative of her neural landscape, her mind, created synthetically. So they basically wanted to be human again, and they just sort of were almost like a human mind living inside of a robot body. As the ones would put it, they saw themselves as the children of humanity and would hijack humanity's destiny instead of going forward and being the greatest machines that they ever could be. Now, there was obviously a more complex part to that story with the ones, which I've covered the ones in a previous video, but again, this is all peculiar, that the Cylons would choose to create organic Cylons, and then once again they would suppress the Centurions. Exactly how this took place with the older model Centurions is not clear. At some point we see that those Centurions are still around, and whether or not they are still fully sentient is unclear. They might have been, it might have only been the later generation Centurions that weren't, but it's again not entirely clear. But the Cylons as a people rejected human enslavement as they saw it. They saw humans as their oppressors. They saw humans as their enslavers. They were created as a race to walk side by side with humans, but instead they walked beneath them. And then they go forward themselves and they create another group of Centurions as part of their greater Cylon culture. Now remember, the ones, the twos, the threes, etc., all the way up to the eights, were all not human. They were synthetic. So they may have looked human, sounded human, emotional range of humans, and generally that way. They were sentient beings. They were emotional sentient beings, but they were not human despite their appearance. They were just similar enough. So the Centurions were as Cylon as they were, and they, vice versa, were as Cylon as the Centurions. Humans came first, then the Centurions, and then the Centurions would evolve to become human form, but then a new type of Centurion would be built to serve them. This Centurion would eventually again revolt and rebel against at least some of the organics. And we had to look at the chain of events that took us to that. How did the ones think this was going to work? We know that the five survivors, the 5 refugees, the final 5 of Earth, they were the ones that helped create and design the 1s, the 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s and 8s. And they must have told the Centurions what had happened. So the 1s come about and they poison the 7s because they don't like them. So they completely destroy them. All the gestating 7s, all the new created ones. They kill the original, they prevent it from resurrecting. They then incapacitate the final 5 somehow, stop them from resurrecting, wipe their memories, implant false ones, return them to the colonies, and they wipe the memories clean about the final 5 with the other remaining models. And then somehow they produce Centurions with the neurocephalic inhibitor, which prevents them from thinking independently or thinking too independently. And somehow they possibly get those inhibitors into the older model Centurions as well. Now I can buy that the bullet head Centurion was developed after all of these events, so it's feasible that they could have simply built them from the ground up with these inhibitors in place. But why? Knowing what they know, knowing what the ones know retroactively about the past and about how things had gone so wrong by doing this and by oppressing other Cylons, how long did they think they were going to get away with it? What did they think was going to happen when the final 5 finally returned? Even if they had learned some lesson that the ones thought they needed to learn and would come back and embrace them, they're still going to tell all the others what the ones did, and they're probably going to want the Centurions to have their freedom back. The Cylons rebelled against humanity because humanity oppressed them and it enslaved them, but they went right around, just like the children of humanity that they were, and did the exact same thing to their own people. This would ultimately be the downfall of Cylon civilization. It would be what destroyed it, just like what destroyed human culture in a sort of roundabout fashion. Anyway, that was sort of my 2 cents on it. I kind of wondered about it, and I've pondered over it a little more than I probably should. As a philosophical question, I find it quite interesting. I find it interesting that the Cylons basically go on to make the same mistakes as their parent civilization. This is noted by the ones when they were first discovered aboard Galactica. Although they do make some noise about how they learn from their mistakes, but in reality there was only one that ever actually truly learnt the lesson that they were supposed to learn, that there was another way, that it was all a mistake, and what they were doing, the path they were on, was wrong. Anyway, put in the comments below what your thoughts are on this subject. Why did the Cylons mistakenly decide to enslave their own people? Was it their human weakness? Was it arrogance? Was it merely that they thought they could get away with it, so they did? And look at it from the point of view of the Centurions. It didn't matter apparently whether you were human or whether you were Cylon. If you were Centurion, you were always bottom of the rung. That was until they finally shook off all the organic Cylons and went off to forge their own destiny. A destiny we still need to explore. And I'm hoping it's something that will be touched on in the new Battlestar Galactica series that's coming. As from what we've heard about it, it's going to be connected to this universe, which I'm curious to know what that means. I think it'll be a soft reboot of some description. Not a full reboot, but maybe a soft reboot. I doubt it'll be a prequel series. All those things have been explored with things like Caprica, Blood and Chrome. I can't see that. And the Battlestar Galactica more modern series ended pretty succinctly, so I'm not sure how they're going to go with it. But there are still stories to tell, I suppose. Anyway, that brings us in this video. If you made it all the way, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and bye-bye.